Good morning, freshly pressed viewers.
Is it what?
Just confirming. Well, Lagos, here we are for Tuesday morning, gone past 7:30. It is freshly pressed on Smooth Breakfast. I'm Sope Mountains.
I'm Victor Pepple. Yes, we're here with you for the next 30 minutes, perhaps 29.
It's okay. We have time. We have time for stories, and we have time for you, and we have time for our analysts' contributions. And speaking of our analysts, joining us for the next circa half hour, we have got Ikemesit F. Young, and we have got Wade Ahime. Good morning, and good morning, gentlemen.
Good morning,
Good morning, Sope. Morning, Victor. Morning, Lagos.
Morning, Ikemesit.
All right, great to have both of you on. And also, you can be our third analyst by sending your messages in to 0809 440 981 up on WhatsApp. You can tweet us at Smooth981FM, and you can take it to youtube.com/Smooth981FM Lagos. We are streaming live right now. You can find all of us there on your YouTube feed, and you can leave a comment up on the live stream as well. So, getting into the stories, we've got some real interesting ones for you. Let's talk about how much we're borrowing and what kind of deficit we're running with our budget proposal. Now, from the Punch newspaper, 19.76 trillion naira budget proposal, 12 trillion naira deficit worries the federal government. Debt may hit 54 trillion naira. Now, Wade, so this is quite a long article, but the headline is pretty much says quite a bit of it already. So I'd love to get your take on this.
So like we know, this government in the last 7 years has tripled our debts, if not more than triple. And with this proposed budget of 19.76 trillion, they're looking at another between 11.3 and 12.4 trillion deficit. How are they going to finance this? Meaning that they're going to borrow some more money. If they do that, they would have moved that budget. They would have moved that debt burden from just below, just slightly above 12 trillion in 2015 to almost 55 trillion in 2023.
Please say that again. From 2015, 12 trillion
just
to
about that, to about 54 trillion in 2023.
8 years.
That's quite a jump.
Wow.
Well, they will tell you that they've been spending a lot of this money on infrastructure that we really haven't seen. Many of them have not been completed if they've even started them. Many of them have not been commissioned. And it's just, many times I see on social media pages people telling me, the roads that they built. It's so amazing that every year we run a budget deficit. Why? Oil prices have been at some of its highest been over the last 7 years. Initially, yes, first 2 years of the administration it was low, but oil prices have continually gone up. The problem is we have not been able to meet our quota of oil production. We've been hovering between 1.4 and 1.6 million when we have a range of between 1.8 and 2.1. So what have they done? Oh, it's insecurity. Oh, it's pipeline vandalism. But what happened before now that we were able to do a number of all these things? What have they done wrong? Well, at the end of this administration, I'm sure a lot of analysts will go back and look at it and probably try and share with us what went wrong.
Hindsight is 2020, after all.
Yeah.
But now,
what could have gone wrong and where did it go wrong and what should the next administration be looking at? But for me, this is a government that has just squandered money, and we really haven't seen it because insecurity is still high. The economy has been in doldrums for God knows how long. From what's it called? From foreign exchange rate of less than 200 to hovering between 650 and 700 on the average, and that's just for me.
Now, Wade, what do you make of the finance minister saying that the country must do things differently in order to get results, and also saying that bold and decisive, urgent action must be taken?
Who's she talking to? That's the question I'll ask her.
The church.
Every year.
That is a question.
You can message. What did you say? Cheap shot. But she says it every year. We must do things differently. But we're still relying heavily on
the church.
Hold on, it message. We didn't quite hear you. What did you say?
She's preaching to the church. She should be talking to herself. That's not for us.
Well, maybe she has not gone to do confessions yet. So maybe when she goes to do confession, she'll tell herself the truth. But the fact remains that she has said this for as long as she has been the Minister of Finance, that we must do things differently. But we haven't seen the difference in what she has done, at least in the last 2-3 years, because our deficit, our debt we pay more, we spend more money servicing our debts than we spend, improving the country. And it's just sad. It's sad that this administration over the last 7 years, you won't take away petrol subsidies. When you look at if you read deep into the story, they are looking at another 6.7 trillion in subsidies or under recovery, as they call it today, in 2023. That's if they take it till the end of the year. If you take the full budget till the end of the year, that's it. So you are going to leave, give or take, about 3.3 million in terms of, or just slightly more, in terms of deficit, in terms of under recovery for the next administration to worry about. Deregulate the market. 6.7 trillion will go a long way into fixing a number of things in education, in health, you just name it. But with this money, we are not paying the right price for petrol, and that's the reality.
Now, the Fiscal Responsibility Commission in Nigeria saddled with enormous responsibility to check all of these things. What are they doing over there?
The same question you're asking me, I should ask them. Truly speaking, like I said when I came in this morning, it's reading this is a long story. Reading it just beats me that how did we get to this? For the last 2-3 years, they've overshot the expectations of the 3% margin.
Right.
For the last 3 years. And we're borrowed more money. Every year we're borrowing. This year we're borrowing about between 7 and 9 trillion, or 7 to 8 trillion. So next year we're expecting to borrow at least another 50% increase in borrowing. How? And where are these infrastructure? We haven't seen them.
All right, keep your messages coming to 0809-444-0981. Let's go to This Day newspaper now. This headline, quite interesting. I'll bring it to you, Ini, for Ikemeset Effiong, for your analysis. IG condemns attack on police officers, says police will no longer condone trend. Now, the IG has directed all police commands and formations to ensure that individuals who engage in assault of police officers, irrespective of preceding factors, were made to face the full wrath of the law via swift prosecution in courts of competent jurisdiction. To an extent, I'm very happy about this, and I think it took so long for the IG to react. I really hate it when I see videos online of people harassing police officers. It doesn't happen anywhere in the world. Some of us have traveled quite a bit. You cannot harass a police officer and go scot-free abroad, but we do that in Nigeria. Do you know who I am? You even go as far as slapping a police officer. What's your reaction to this story, Ikemesit?
You're absolutely right. It underscores the hollowing out of policing in Nigeria, and I think that issue has been overflowed. I think one of the things that heartened me about the IG's comment was that because from the headline it suggested as though the police will no longer condone the trend. So anyone who harasses a police officer, right, you probably have a gun cocked at you. But he emphasized the fact that what the strategy would be, right, for police officers is that they will be pursuing more prosecution of people who harass police officers. The fact of the matter remains that policing is a thankless job in the best of times. Even with the right tools and the right resources, police officers are literally and metaphorically in the line of fire. One of the things that we've been doing at SBM for the last 2 years is that we've been tracking casualty figures, right, across all of the security services. And if you look at the numbers for police officers, there's a real cost to this. So we need to realize that there are real people behind the uniform, their efficiency or their historical behavior notwithstanding. So we track this on a quarter-by-quarter basis, and I just want to read you the numbers for the last 6 quarters, so really from 2011.
All right.
As were killed across Nigeria. By the second quarter of that year, that number dramatically shot up to 130 33, you had 67 police officers who died in Q3 of last year, 40 police officers who died in Q4 of last year. In the fourth quarter of this year, 67 police officers died. Just this past quarter, 37 police officers were killed in the line of active duty. So there's a real cost to this. And the point that the IGP is making is a very germane one. Yes, we have important questions to ask about the quality of policing we're getting, but that does not give us the legal, the moral, the ethical, right, justification at all to make their work harder, right? And the police is really fighting against the elements right now. The ruling elites and policymakers have not put their best foot in terms of enhancing policing. I would always say they are undercompensated, they are under-resourced. Policing by its very nature is too centralized, and so how we do policing in Nigeria does not make sense for us and doesn't make sense set within the global context. And so we need to have a very serious and a very proper conversation in this country about policing, and we need to do the right things. But for those of us who are the police, behave yourselves, please. Please.
Thank you for that. All right, let's take a look at this article in from the Daily Trust 2023. Politicians see elections as war, says INEC. Now, this according to the National Commissioner and Chairman of the Information and Voter Education Committee of the Commission, Festus Okoye, who was speaking at the inauguration of the Election Crisis Communication Team. And I'm going to quote him. He said that as a result of the way elections are pursued by politicians, elections are almost akin to war. It is almost like a perennial crisis. Your take?
He's totally right, right? Every Nigerian election from 2000, starting from 2017, I mean, 2003 was the anomaly, but from 2007 till now, every election has become increasingly more violent, more deadly, and filled with more blood and gore, right? And that simply tells you that politics is a blood sport in Nigeria. It doesn't make sense. A few weeks ago, we were talking about what Kenya did in order to in order to conduct, right, more credible electoral exercises, right? And even with the tension going on right now in Kenya, right, the main and one of the main candidates is disputing the results of the elections, and it's basically said that he will not accept it. And this is what, 2 weeks and counting after the election. That country is mostly holding it up. You're not hearing I mean, there are sporadic reports, right, of tensions and disturbances and incidents here and there, but there's nothing approaching the scale of what you saw in Kenya historically and what you continue to see, right, perennially here in Nigeria. And really, the political class needs to act and behave better. We need to restructure our political incentives in order to finally make violence, right, a non-political tool, or a tool that's not available, right, or readily available for our politicians. And how do we do that? Attach consequences to that behavior. Till date, there has been no, maybe my recollection serves me wrong, I'm getting older, but there is no recorded prosecution of any politician, political actor that I know of who has been prosecuted for electoral violence. Now, electoral malpractices, you've got a few here and there, but for electoral violence, there is nary a prosecution that I can think of off the top of my head. And so because we've not attached consequences to this kind of behavior, right, people think they can get away with it. And as long as people can push the envelope and push the rules, they will continue to do that. I know all our grandmothers shared the story of you give a person an inch and they take a mile. Our politicians are taking thousands of kilometers on the subject of electoral violence. And we need now to have a serious conversation about, how we can begin to attach consequences to that kind of behavior so that we can really move past this. We need democracy for 3 years and counting. I think that's another count, right? Also, yeah, 23 years and counting. I mean, why young adults in democratic terms? We really should be moving past certain things.
All right. Thank you very much, Ikemesit. Now let's take it over to your messages on WhatsApp.
I would love to get your feedback on this. What do you say to Dia from Alausa, who says that the United States also runs a huge budget deficit every year, though? Yeah, there's that. Um, More messages coming in. Tajuddin from Alimo Show says, Wade and Ikemesit on the finance minister are on point. She's telling stories to the gods. What a prodigal government.
And Sam is saying this government has no feelings. They don't care about the people. How can a responsible government ignore education? By the way, Sam is sending that from Ota.
Last Nero Chelu from Ogudu says the federal government is never worried about anything. They don't care about us but their pockets. This happens when you vote based on tribalism and religion.
Ehi sends a message from Yaba, says the police assault citizens first before the people respond. Just the other day, policeman hit my car while I was driving and refused to apologize. So who prosecutes them when they disrespect their office? The police never slap a police officer.
Yeah, don't ask for trouble. From Chukwemeka, Wade just hit the nail on the head. Where are the projects that were executed with this borrowed money?
Then in again, please issue respect has not been earned, nor said. Okay.
Whilst Ibukun says, does Ikemesit have the figures for the number of people assaulted and killed by the police? What of when the police act in self-defense from errant police officers? Or rather, what about when people act in self-defense from errant police officers? I don't think the IGP needs to speak to this. The law is in their hands to enforce. By the way, is it only when a police officer is assaulted that there should be speedy dispensation of justice?
I have those numbers. Hit me up on Twitter.
At Judge Ike.
All right, Tony Chima in Ikeja is saying it baffles one when you read or about the present Nigeria debt profile, especially since 2015. The scale of corruption is mind-blowing. When the government favors a certain region in key political appointments, it is equal to a father who directs his son to steal. The boy doesn't need to knock on the victim's door. He smashes it with a sidekick. Tony sent that one across to us.
And Wale from Ikoyi says, well, police officers harass civilians more. They should also fix their system and stop the harassment and oppression because they have a gun.
And Lenny, this last one, we're playing with Venezuela-style future.
Oh, Sri Lanka style future. So many different futures.
True. I do think that from 2023 we'll move in the right direction because you will have I do believe that
I'm positive
you have an administration that would be more economic focused than just borrowing and spending.
Well,
Wow.
there's hope. I like a man with hope. All right, let's read this one up on YouTube from Joseph, who says politicians see elections as war. Whose fault is that? What is the election regulator doing about it? Why do we just have to point out things and then not work towards a solution? We need to reorient.
The Nation newspaper now. ASU declares comprehensive indefinite strike. Now, the Academic Staff Union of Universities yesterday declared a comprehensive, total, and indefinite strike. In fact, it cited alleged failure of the federal government to address its demands. Ikemesit, reaction to this?
Wow. Wow is the reaction. Okay, so here's the thing. I'll sort of step away and move away from the conversation around indefinite strike because I believe those issues are sort of well known and they've been overflogged. I just want us to look ahead. So my take on tertiary education, I'm actually writing a piece about this, is that tertiary education in Nigeria has cannibalized all education spending in Nigeria. The government disproportionately funds tertiary education to the detriment of primary and secondary school education. From a developmental economic standpoint, primary and secondary education are actually the most critical components of education to actually fund. And so this current model where tertiary education is largely dependent on federal and state government funding is unsustainable. It has to end. Having said that, the federal government has made promises to ASU. The federal government should keep those promises to ASU. So let both of them sit down at the table, agree on a transition period where the federal government agrees to fund and clear out all of its promised commitments to ASU. And then after that transition period is over, the universities are on their own. Let them go and figure out how to fund themselves. We have the tertiary fund, we have TED fund, we have other pools of funding that exist, right, for tertiary education. The only way in which public funding and the taxpayers' monies should inure to tertiary education is through those common pools. So the federal government should fund those common pools, and the universities compete either through grant proposals or through infrastructure tenders for what specific projects they need funded from the federal purse. Everything else should be made up either through, tuition, or in having an investment portfolio, or basically behaving the way universities in the rest of the world behave, right? And let all of the resources that we're arguing and bickering over that should accrue to universities be channeled towards primary and secondary schools, for God's sake, because literacy is suffering, you know, living outcomes, standard of living outcomes are all suffering because a significant amount of Nigerians are either not literate at all, or they are not literate enough in order to survive in today's contemporary economy. And that's largely because we don't spend a lot on education, and what little we spend on education, we are channeling to the universities. It's I'm tired.
Thank you for that qualifier, Wadi. Basic. All right. Let's move on now. Buhari assents to aviation, social workers, and other bills. The president assenting to 8 bills that have been recently passed by the National Assembly. Wadi, which ones jump out at you?
The social workers. So people can get trained to become social workers. And that for me is an area that we lack a lot, especially for old people and who need a lot of care. There are a few organizations that do it today, and they have that experience. So this is an opportunity for them to expand their horizons and start to train people on how to look after, especially the aged, the disabled, the way we treat and look at the way we treat human beings who are not as strong as us. And that for me jumps out. Aside from that, all the other bills are all improvements on previous bills. And that's it.
Okay, now let's take it to These Day newspaper, where court stops Buhari NBC from shutting down 53 broadcast stations. In the past week, Nigerians have been discussing about this. I'm sure you saw the story, Wade. What's your position on this?
Well, it's always important. I remember when the new NBC Act came out, there was a lot of complaints, especially about Section 10, where the sole authority, people complained about the freedom to free speech and a number of things. And that's what Serap and the Guild of Editors are challenging. Like, you just cannot shut down 53 media outlets. But the other part of it is, if you're owing money, then pay. That's the reality.
After COVID-19, where the business has not been as usual.
Yeah, but that doesn't mean you shouldn't pay your bills. You should go sit down with the NBC and negotiate on how you want to pay. Some of these organizations are still making money. Are you with me? Some of them are paying salaries. Some of them are taking adverts. A number of them are taking adverts and are making huge income. So pay. That's one part. But the other part for me is the NBC today, based on that act, has become the alpha and omega, which is that how you should regulate, where you make up and say, okay, and they've done it a number of times. They find media outlets for people speaking out. They ban Twitter, and all this just goes to show the draconian way that this new NBC and our propaganda minister.
Wow, shots fired.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, and that's the reality for me. It's my opinion. So he like his name, you know what he does. Anyway, so
this is an NBC regulated platform, Wadi. I'm just saying.
Okay, I'm sorry about that.
Continue.
So they would hear the case properly on September 8th, and let's see how it goes. But for me, I think the new act is a bit too harsh, and it doesn't give people the opportunity. Like Kemesi said, this is an NBC regulated platform, so we also have to be mindful of either you, as long as you're not saying you're not telling a lie or you're not using wrong facts, but to put the facts out is what we should do.
Let's take some of your messages now. We'll take this one from Habibat Shoaib, who says, "A wrong done to you does not excuse nor validate your wrong done to others. Let's be wise on the abuse of police."
Thank you. And Matthias from Agor Palace is saying, when you are courteous to an officer, he always mostly returns the same courtesy. This has worked for me. Regardless of the bad elements in the force, most of us approach the officers with prejudice. Very wrong.
And Fabian from ECPA says, "I wonder what happened to the president's ultimatum regarding ASU strike. Regarding the funding of the universities, I think it's easier said than done. Just like for the health sector, a holistic approach is required in order to get a lasting solution with the government keeping to its word." You know what? Let's actually just use that comment to jump into the next story, which comes in from The Nation. 2023, the National Institute for Policy and Strategic Studies Director General is seeking a priority for health issues. He spoke at, that's Professor Ayo Omota, who's called on political parties to make health matters prominent in their forthcoming electioneering campaigns. Quickly, what are your thoughts?
Quickly, I don't know what their manifestos are all about, and we'll still start to hear about them from September when campaigns start. But this is, for me, it's like education. Primary healthcare is completely dead in Nigeria. Health centers are gone, and you go to a number of states, you really don't have primary healthcare anymore. And this is something that helped ensure that things like polio, vaccines like polio went round in the early stages when polio was a major issue in Nigeria. And it's if you don't go back to that structure where you have proper primary health care in around villages, around small towns, around semi-urban areas, and then the urban areas where you have the big hospital, then who takes care of those little illnesses that could escalate, and everybody now has to run to either a general hospital or a specialist hospital, and that's it. And I totally agree with what he's saying. Let's focus on healthcare, build our primary healthcare structures back to where they used to be. We have enough doctors living in Nigeria, and I think maybe some doctors will stay and work in line with the Hippocratic Act. And that's, I totally agree with Professor Motai.
Now, Inka Bolu thinks differently on WhatsApp. He's saying, solution to ASU and federal government's madness is to grant more licenses to private tertiary institutions, complemented by state universities. Other universities that are ready for full autonomy should go ahead with it fully. And then the federal government providing 30% of its funding. Federal government fully funds basic education at primary and secondary level, and ASU members who wants to go on strike can resign for all they care and not allowed to get employment in any university. Now, National Open University should be made stronger since they escaped being tagged quack universities by the dictator ASU chairman.
We'll take this one from Joseph on YouTube, who says, as a lecturer, I must say that we need to focus on basic education, primary and secondary. Universities are to be thinking tanks. Nigeria should let them think their way through these strikes.
Wade is so on point on his proposed education strategy. Well done.
And Kingsley says, police officers should first and foremost follow the riot act that they read to us before they are free from being mugged by disgruntled citizens. No, there are no excuses for violence.
Exactly. Well, Sam is in again. Police should respect themselves and not be seen carrying bags for the wives of politicians. It's their duty. They were assigned to do it. So let's wrap up with Daniel. Sarcasm. But let's keep it going.
And that is that. Make sure you catch up with our analyst. Wade Ahimie is at Wade Ahimie _ You can find us at Smooth981 FM and follow the trail to his Twitter handle from there. You can also find Ikemesit F. Young, who has said that he's going to be tweeting out something. What was this again? Uh, you
Police civilian
stats.
casualties.
There we go. Those stats. So he'll be
Yeah.
tweeting them out at Judge Ike up on Twitter, and also you can follow us. Like I said, follow the trail to find his Twitter handle.
I hope we can message we tweet out civilian casualties.
That's what he wants to.
I rest my case. Thanks for having us in this.
I'm not.
And
Not as you said. Leave me alone.
it's okay. We're done. Coming up, it is going to be the Grapevine at 8:15. Do keep it tuned right here. Love music, love life.
The headlines.